So yeah, I am coming at you from Glasgow in the UK. Up in Scotland, it is raining. It is about 6 degrees outside, and somehow it is summer. So if you do like the sunny weather, do not move to Scotland. But yeah, I got have been working with Condens now for kind of the past 3 years. They were a tool that when I joined the Weir Group, we were looking around for kind of an online tool that we can initially just store all of our research. We were starting to do this. We were brought in, and we came across Condens 3 years ago. They were a relatively new startup back then, but met a few of the team, and it seemed to be kind of a tool that met all of our jobs to be done, all of our user needs. And yeah, we've not looked back since. And it's really cool to see, I suppose, kind of everything that Condens has done over the years. So as Phyllis said, my name is Christian. I am a senior UX researcher or designer. We kind of do a bit of everything around here at the Weir Group. We are a global manufacturing company that work kind of within the mining sector. And yeah, we're going to be chatting today a bit about our ESG, our sustainability stuff, and how Condens was a really key tool that we used in helping our sustainability team effectively gather a lot of their kind of KPI data. I'd love questions. I think there's time for questions at the end, but if there are questions throughout, please just stick them in the chat, and then we'll have kind of a list that we can get to at the end. Cool. So the Weir Group, we're a FTSE 100 multi-billion-pound company, founded in 1871. So we're kind of just over about 150-ish years old. And we started out in shipbuilding in Glasgow. So some people might know, but Glasgow is one of the most kind of famous industrial cities when it comes to shipbuilding. And that primarily is because of the Weir Group and the two Weir brothers back in the day who started that. Over the years, we've stayed in, I suppose, kind of the industrial manufacturing world of shipbuilding. We went into oil and gas and we're really involved in there for a while. We're really involved in mining. And we now are a pure play mining technology company. So we ourselves don't operate kind of these huge mine sites that are maybe in kind of like Australia or South America or all over the world. But we produce and manufacture all of or most of the equipment that is used. So you can see on this little diagram, pretty much everything that is there, from getting it out of the ground through to transporting it, through to getting big rocks into small rocks, through to getting out all of these kind of key materials that are needed. We build all of the equipment, and we are the world leaders in building that equipment to do so. Just to give you a bit of an idea about how big our stuff is, this was one of our relatively smaller truck bodies. So we make the big red bit that's on top, and these are normal sized people. And that is a pretty small sized truck. So these things are absolutely ginormous that we manufacture. I work within our digital team, obviously, and we build a whole range of digital products across kind of our entire ecosystem. So from our kind of global brochureware website that has product information, corporate information, all that kind of boring website stuff, through to condition monitoring systems for our equipment. So imagine like a smart monitor that you might have at home to measure your electricity usage, like that, but to huge scales. They can track, they can measure everything, they can see it all, through to apps that they can actually use on the specific equipment. So this one in particular is one called Tooth Tech. What this does is it allows the operator to take a photo of all of the digger teeth. So if you imagine a big digger bucket, that has the little teeth at the end of it. Those teeth wear down over time. The bucket itself might last 10, 15 years, but those little teeth at the end that are actually digging into the ground do wear down over time. Our users or our customers want to get the most amount of wear out of their equipment before they replace it. However, they cannot let this stuff break. If it breaks or falls into a piece of equipment or can cause a site shutdown, they could be losing millions of dollars an hour of the site not operating. So it is of utmost importance that they are getting the right information and being able to predict the most effective time. So we developed an app where they take photos of it every single shift. So there'd be about 30 photos a day. We then have software that will measure the wear compared to the stuff that they're digging out of the ground. And then we can predict when they need to replace it. And then also we can say, oh, well, it takes 3 months to ship this to you. So then that will feed back to our sales teams and trigger all of that. So we do a whole range of different things. And not only do we operate for our customers on actual mine sites, but we work across factories, we work across mine sites, and we work across boardrooms, and all of the users that come along with them. So one really cool project that I'm doing primarily out in Australia right now is digitizing some of our factory processes. So how can we bring technology into our factories to improve, make it safer, make it higher quality, and make it more efficient, as well as using some really, really cool AI technology with cameras to be able to measure and to track the amount of rubble or the amount of stuff that is being transported across. So that's a bit of an overview to Weir and what we do. We have 12,000 employees and we have 3 UX designers. When I'm showing off, I always like to say that I am our global international lead for user research across a multi-billion-pound company, and I lead that at a global level. That is me. So sounds quite impressive. At the end of the day, it's actually just me doing stuff by myself with a team of 2 that I work really closely with. So we're here to talk about sustainability. Within our sector, sustainability is a huge, huge, huge focus. Our whole tagline is mining technology for a sustainable future. It's pretty important across our industry, across the world, but our industry, obviously, especially, is how can we focus more and more on building both sustainable and efficient practices? How can we use less water? How can we produce less waste? How can our customers use less energy in order to get all of the relevant rare materials out of the ground? Electrification is something that is happening worldwide. To electrify, you need really rare materials like lithium and all of that kind of stuff. That has to come from somewhere. So how can we produce that as effectively and efficiently as possible? So it's a key thing, but you've also got to make sure that you're doing it properly when it comes to sustainability. There is so much focus and so much scrutiny in the industry about this that if it is being done, it has got to be done properly. The rise in what people are calling carbon accounting or auditing of sustainability documentation. Huge companies in the UK, certainly, that have been caught out lying or greenwashing. So yeah, it's a really, really big focus. And there's the big financial audit companies that like kind of like your PwC, your KPMG, that are in the financial audit world are starting to build out huge sustainability teams, as well as specific focused agencies such as EcoVadis is probably the biggest one to provide sustainable governance and auditing. It is something that is becoming law. It is something that is huge in the investment community, and it's something that's huge to our customers and to us. So with all that in mind, back in 2022, our sustainability team came to us with a task. They said, we need you to build a tool for Annette to pull together ESG KPI data. So ESG is environmental social governance. So it's the specific word, I suppose, for sustainability. So whenever you see ESG, it's kind of hand in hand, the same as sustainability. So they need to see that KPI data. So what are the key KPIs that are being focused on? How we need to build a tool that Annette can pull all that together. So Annette is our group ESG governance and reporting manager. So they came to us with this task, and as many of you on the call are no doubt UXers or researchers, we told everyone to take a breath, just calm down, and understand actually what's the problem? What are we trying to solve? Why is that? Why is that? Why doing the classic, the five whys, building out problem statements, wanting to take a step back to say, right, yeah, we think you've got a potential solution, but let's just slow down a bit and look at what actually is going on. From that and that conversation, we actually understood that gathering ESG KPI data or gathering data for our ESG KPI reporting is really inefficient and really complicated. Okay, that's good. We can work with that. It's inefficient and it's complicated for Annette to pull all of that information together. So we had a starting point to go off. So we had a few more workshops with our sustainability team to understand kind of the scope, the scale, draw out that kind of information. And what we then understood or learned, and actually I should rephrase, we didn't have a couple of workshops. We had one workshop because they wanted just us to build something. So we had one session where we were able to draw out that problem and to be able to understand this. So scope 1, 2, and 3 are key ESG KPIs, probably the most important that are out there right now. And this is usage data or emissions or carbon emissions or CO2e. It's more complicated than that, but fundamentally, it's all of our emissions, both for our factories of us producing it, for employees traveling, for our operational equipment that's building this stuff, shipping and logistics, measuring all of that, operating costs, all of that, but also our products in use. So not only are we accounting for our information, our usage, when our products are being used by our customers, we have to account for the usage there as well. And this information was held by hundreds of different people all over the world. There are some really good benefits of working for a global company. There are some really annoying benefits of working for a global company. And that comes down to time zones. It comes down to trying to get people in the same place. It comes down to languages. So there's lots and lots of issues that Annette has gathering all of this information from. If it's one person and they're on holiday, then she can't get that information. There are legal requirements that we have to publish information. So Annette was getting really, really stressed, and it was a really key issue for her to be able to get all of this as easily as possible. So we understood that. And then we were starting to build out that conversation, starting to understand the scope of what we were having. But we came up against kind of a few questions when we wanted to take a step back. Weir is super old school in the way that we work and the way that we operate. The IT or the digital team in the past have just built things that they're told to build. We then came in as a user experience team and actually pushed back or asked questions, which never happened in the past. So there was a fair bit of pushback or frustration or worry that the sustainability team maybe had. And what it comes down to is actually, it wasn't negative. It was just people were nervous. People were inexperienced. People were just ignorant. They didn't understand why we were asking these questions. There was lots of questions. There was lots of confusion, wondering how much it'll cost, how much time it will take. We don't necessarily want some random guy in digital actually going and speaking to really important people all over the world about this information. Just do what we say and help Annette do her job and build this. And I think it's really important to remember when we're brought in on projects or when we have things like this, that this is just another project for us. This is what we do, or this is what I do. But actually, for our sustainability team, this was the #1 most important task that they had to do. People's probably jobs depended on it. People's bonuses definitely depended on it. And it was a key objective that they had to achieve, was to fix this problem. And they thought they had done that by coming up with this solution they wanted us to implement. So we saw it as an opportunity for education. And thankfully, and this isn't always the case, but thankfully they were kind of open to us being like, okay, well, let's actually educate you. Let's have a conversation. Let's explain how we do things and how we operate. So we talked them through kind of how we run workshops. We talked them through why we want to speak to people and all that stuff. They kind of understood. They they want to speak to people. They understand that we need to gather information, but they are experts in sustainability. They are experts in this stuff. Why did I need to come in? And this was where actually Condens was really, really helpful to explain the process of synthesis and the process of analysis and the process of how we get from conversations to actions and to insights. And Condens was actually amazing at explaining our process. We walked them through previous projects to kind of ease that apprehension and to help them understand everything that was going on. They wanted to understand how we translate conversations into findings. So we explained, well, we have the sessions, we record them, we upload them to Condens, this cool tool that we use to get all of this. We then go through that session and we highlight those snippets, we add those tags, all that stuff that Phyllis showed you earlier. And when we're going through, we watch back that interview that we've just conducted, and we're going through and we're tagging it up, we're adding all of these insights, we're identifying all of these things. From there, after we've done all of that, we review all of these tags, and we use those to identify key trends and key themes. And we had charts that we could pull out to say, well, on this project, we can see this was the most commonly talked about tag. Therefore, this needs to be a key focus. And it was really helpful when it came to kind of that prioritization piece, where we could say, these are the most common things that are being talked about. And you'll be able to back that up. You click into that and you can watch all of the videos. You can see me have that conversation. And then we put together those reports, highlighting those clips from actual users. I did once have someone saying that, oh, well, that's all well and good, but that's your opinion. And I said, well, no, this isn't my opinion. This is the opinion of our actual users. Here is a report that has these video clips of people complaining, of people moaning, of all of these insights. So actually having Condens helped us actually step by step walk through what we're doing. And fundamentally, and it blows my mind every single time I have this conversation with somebody that's normally very senior and paid way more than I do, that just doesn't get it. And it's that we speak to people, we understand their needs, and then we build a solution that meets their needs. And by breaking it down and showing them a real example from another project, we showed how we can apply it to them. Fundamentally, our job is really, really easy. And sometimes people don't understand. It almost seems too easy. People don't understand the simplicity of it and overcomplicate it in their minds. So having that, being able to walk them through that whole step was really, really helpful. And this almost kind of got that buy-in, and kind of we sold them research by selling them Condens. We explained how it worked. We explained this is how we do it. This is how Condens does this, how it does this, how it does this, and they got it. Something happened, a light bulb came on, and they were like, right, okay, we get it. What do we do now? So we had another session, and we were able to actually build out an objective. We were able to say, right, we need, as part of this research process, we need to identify how ESG KPI data reporting can be improved to add value to users. Now, this wasn't something that we were able to do overnight, probably from the first conversation through to them almost agreeing and signing off on a scope of work was maybe kind of 2-3 months. People take time to come around to things, and sometimes, as frustrating as it is, you've got to build another deck that explains it, or you've got to have another conversation, probably with somebody more senior and more paid than you, to explain and justify you doing your job. So this was our objective, and this was our research process. This is what it looked like. We were able to identify all of those users that were involved in that ESG data, involved in collating it, involved in inputting it into systems, involved in tracking it, all the way up to Annette at the end, who was bringing it all together. So we were able to identify 40 people across kind of group, minerals, and ESCO, which is kind of the whole of Weir. And we were able to build these people out as participants within Condens. Now, Participants is kind of another thing that Condens has, where you can kind of add all of the information about your users. And it was really helpful because for certain people on certain projects, you have maybe got NDAs, you have got consent forms, and you can just stick them all in there. There is one place. It's all historical. It's all accessible. It's great. It's just everything you need in one spot. We conducted those interviews, and this worked with absolutely everyone from factory leads, shipping and logistics, health and safety, anybody that touched ESG data I wanted to speak to. This meant I was on calls at 2 a.m. sometimes with people. This meant I was on calls with people as they were in their car on bad signals out in the middle of Australia. This meant I was going all over the place, chatting to these people. The vast majority of them were on Teams, which actually made the process easier because the negatives of remote interviews, obviously you're not there, you can't have the contextual, but it meant you could really easily record the session, get really clear audio. So when you actually upload it into Condens and it transcribes and all that kind of stuff, it makes life a lot easier. So we fired them all into Condens afterwards. And across kind of 40 employees, we had 347 highlights that we created. And 605 tags across 48 topics. And when we kind of at the end of the time when I showed this slide to kind of the execs that were involved, putting some numbers down really helped show the size and the scale of, I suppose, kind of this project. From that, we were able to identify 9 archetypes or personas. 49 jobs to be done is kind of the methodology that we use. As well as mapping out some user journeys kind of with those pain points. We tended to do those in Miro. I think back then Condens didn't have the user journey stuff. So we were kind of jumping between, oh, here's Miro, but here's a link in Miro with the video that you can use to back it up. So we were using those as well as actually the video of somebody explaining, oh, I have to go to this person and they go to that person and they go to that person and they go to that person. And when you have got a 4-minute video of someone explaining how they get one number, like that's just gold dust. You're on these calls, and again, I'm sure everyone can relate to it, but you're on these calls and someone says something and you're just like, yes, that is what I needed. That is the absolute perfect thing. We then ran design sprints to look at how can we best build out a solution that came from that. But this was obviously a big piece of work, a really, really big piece of work. And we wanted to keep our stakeholders engaged throughout the process. I have worked with agencies in the past, I've worked in agencies in the past, and you have that conversation where they're like, oh yeah, we'll go away, and then you don't hear from them for 3 months, and then they come back and you have a 1-hour session and they've probably gone completely awry or they've not involved and it's just chaos. So we wanted to keep our stakeholders engaged throughout that entire process that I was doing all that research. It was 10 weeks in total that I was away chatting to people. And again, Condens was a really good tool. There was almost direct access into my brain. We had weekly project calls where I would kind of update on progress. And the number one thing that we would kind of use as a key focus was the all tags chart. So we could see actually what are the top things that keep coming up again and again and again. So that was always almost the first thing that I would bring up my screen. We would bring that up, and that would almost lead the conversation of here are the key things. We were then inviting stakeholders along to actually join those sessions. Again, nothing new there. Everyone will have done that in the past. We also set up stakeholders with what's called kind of stakeholder accounts in Condens. So obviously we didn't want to give them a seat because we didn't want to kind of pay for them to be in there, to be honest. But they've got kind of those stakeholder accounts where they can go in and they can actually just look at the information and they can review those videos in depth if they want to. As well as then having the final thing we had was that kind of open Condens report. So we had a report with a link that went out to anybody really that wanted to see it. And a password on that as well, just to make sure that it was safe. But that was something that I was constantly building out all of my thoughts. And as it was all going, as kind of, as your brain is processing all of this, they could jump in. And it was well communicated that this is a really messy, really dirty report. This is not a final thing. This is just my working. And I think in an ideal world, you would have research is done and then decisions are made. But let's be honest, that doesn't happen. Decisions are constantly being made. You don't always have time to do research immediately, or not to do research and then make the decisions after that. So drip feeding kind of all of this information was great. And I think the best thing about it, I suppose, was it's almost drip feeding that information. We're constantly just exposing them to more and more insights and more things over those 3 months, rather than having that kind of like, here is a 1 hour debrief of absolutely everything that we have managed to condense into 4 slides. We had 50 hours of conversation. We did this, we did this, we did this, like, and then you do it, and probably half of the stakeholders don't turn up to the meeting. You spend hours building out a deck of all of these findings. You send it around afterwards, and no one is ever going to look at it again. And half the people are only listening anyway. So Condens was great of having that always alive thing that people could always go into and ask questions. They would jump in, and I would get Teams messages saying, oh, I saw this, what does this mean? Or I saw this, what does this mean? And wanting to learn more. We were also making some pretty big statements in our research. I think our sustainability team thought they had a pretty good grasp on how things worked, and how everything happened. But there were some ways that they were wrong. And again, that's having those uncomfortable conversations and telling people that they're wrong about what they think they knew is a key skill that as researchers and designers we have to have. But having those video clips was absolutely crucial in that. So we could make these claims that customers are aware, but it's still new. For our sales teams, it's a key thing, but actually it's not important enough for certain customers. They care about the efficiency side of things more than the sustainability side of things. And we were able to say these claims confidently because I had the videos, I had the evidence, the backing up all of these claims, that if people wanted to push back, I'm like, great, go watch the video. Simple as that. That this person said this, go and speak to them if you want to. If you want to get more clarification, go and speak to them again. That's what they had. So I think one of the biggest things that really came away from this was all of our data providers, they were kind of called, were actually also data users. People that were providing data at a regional level or a factory level or at a country level. They wanted to see how they compared to other countries. They wanted to see how their factory compared to other factories. They wanted to review their stats and cross compare and break down and have this, be able to see it all absolutely everywhere. And this completely changed the scope of the project, because from that initial task that we were given of just build a tool for a net to pull together all of this data, it actually completely transformed into build a tool that anyone across the whole of Weir, 12,000 of us, can access up-to-date, accurate, granular, malleable data. They had to be able to find that and tailor that exactly to what they wanted at a country level, at a regional level, and be able to really, really, really filter all the way down. It wasn't just for a net to bring everything in. It was for everyone that is involved to be able to see how they compare to absolutely everything. So that was the big takeaway, and that completely transformed the entire scope of the project. We went from a small team up to kind of a larger team. More people came in, more important people came in, and when that happened and it grew, when we moved on to those next phases, again, Condens, despite being the research, and the research was kind of done at this point, it was actually really, really good in those next stages, because we were easily able to ramp up new stakeholders as they were brought in. You had some new senior stakeholders that came in with their senior stakeholder opinions that we all know and we all love. But again, we had that report that we could easily knock back their claims or their thoughts, or justify. We could justify design decisions. We could justify budget decisions. Again, we're talking about a lot of data, and all that data's got to be stored somewhere, and all that costs money. And it also kept us focused and grounded. Alongside all of this stuff, obviously we had those jobs to be done that were the key foundation. kind of for all of that information and for all that came away from all those all that research. And both kind of those jobs to be done were the key focus going forward. But again, if people are like, oh, well, what does that mean? What does that job to be done mean? I don't understand it, or I don't understand the context. We were able to really easily and quickly jump back, look at the tag, and then build out and watch those videos off the back of that. And what we came up with was actually just a really malleable tool. Now, unfortunately, I can't show you the numbers, obviously, but we used a tool called Power BI, which I imagine a lot of people are probably familiar with if you're in the Microsoft world. But actually, the tool that we used is kind of irrelevant, but it was data visualization. We always knew it was going to be data visualization. To be honest, when they first came to us saying we need a tool, that tool was going to be Power BI. It was going to be a data visualization tool because a net needs to visualize data. But what we didn't know was how do we build that? What data do we need to visualize? What filters do we need to have? How can we go from kind of an overview page down even more and look at it actually at a country level or look at it at an energy source level? How can we really get really, really granular in everything that we're doing? And that was what we built. It was delivered, and yeah, we had happy users, we had happy stakeholders. I had a very happy boss, and then off the back of that, we had more work. So scope 1, 2, and 3, which was just the key focus of. There is a scope 4, which is another one. A year later, they came back and it worked so well almost the first time, or the collaboration between these two teams, that they wanted to delve deeper into their scope 4. It's a lot more complicated. It's a lot more it's a lot newer in the regulations. So they wanted to understand what their users think of this, how their users are interacting with it. And again, what we managed to do when new stakeholders came in was to show them how the previous project would work. We still had to educate people. There were still new people that were skeptical, but we had tools to educate them. And also we had that senior buy-in because last year we delivered a project that worked really successfully. Off the back of this, we got quite busy. And as I said, we're quite a small team. And what we then built out, what I was tasked to build out, was to build out a user research off-the-shelf process that anyone at Weir can access research resources and tools to be able to conduct user research. We were able to go in and help on the big projects. But again, if there's little small projects or teams that wanted to kind of get this stuff, we maybe didn't have the time or didn't have the ability or capacity to help them. So we built an off-the-shelf process that anyone from Weir can go in, and there's tools and there's templates and there's information and there's ways you can do things, and our top tips for kind of really, really basic kind of dipping your toe in user research. And again, kind of that Condens played a key role throughout that. In the recruiting phase, we could see where all of our customers were because we have that participant CRM that lives in Condens, that people can go in, they can search for job titles, they can search for companies, and they can see all of the people that sit there. In the conducting, in the synthesizing, they've got all of that stuff. And actually our global head of sustainability was part of that launch video. We asked him if he'd be happy to kind of talk through the case study of how we came in and kind of helped transform that. And yeah, he was more than happy to, and it could not have gone better. So I always struggle at these kind of events because whenever you're at conferences, someone's like, here is what I did and it was amazing and we changed the world and our company is absolutely perfect, and you're sitting there like it's not really, is it? But so are all 12,000 employees now conducting in-depth user research before making decisions? And is that all because of Condens? Is this the absolute golden bullet that if you're thinking of getting it, if you get Condens, all of a sudden your life is going to get so much easier and everyone is going to come on board and all of these new stakeholders are going to love you and it's all going to go well? Well, no, sorry. It doesn't work like that. We are still fighting every single day to get a place at the table, to be there, to get heard. And know what very, very few people across our entire company know of Condens. But what we have been able to do with the people that we have interacted with and the people that have seen the way that we use Condens, and we've used Condens to explain, I suppose, our process, is we're getting them to think. We're getting them to ask questions. We're getting them to wonder who their decisions will impact. And when they get to that point, then we're there to help them. Are we absolutely amazing at what we do here? Absolutely not. Are we probably pushing out subpar products that don't have good user research? Probably all the time. But what we're doing in the projects that we are being able to get involved in and that we are getting known for and is building every single day is we're getting our users to think, we're getting our stakeholders to think. And whether that is them just internally thinking, is this the right thing? Or should we take a step back? Or is it, let's do a bit of user research and we can use that off-the-shelf process? Or is it, oh, let's reach out to kind of the UX team and get them on board and kind of almost second them in for a project? That's what we're getting them to do. And Condens really helps facilitate that thinking by being able to break it down, those high level concepts of speak to people, understand their needs, and build a solution. Condens isn't the golden bullet, but it's a great tool to help facilitate that thinking, to break it down. And yeah, I think just to conclude, I think it helps us have happy stakeholders. It makes my life a lot easier in terms of all of the research and all of the admin. But actually, from a battling with stakeholders or justifying, it helps you justify it. It helps you make it visible. It helps make confident decisions. It helps you kind of easily ramp up new people by having that all together final report, which isn't anything new, but report with those videos and real life behind it. And it's a really great tool to keep you kind of focused and grounded.